and Formula One Philosophy is back for a Saudi Arabian Grand Prix recap. Once again, we'll be doing the good and the bad. This is part one of the good we saw in the race. Nick and Sean are back, and a crazy cat is in the background screaming. If you hear him, he was fired. We tried to get rid of him, but he stands outside our window screaming for his job back. Sorry, everybody. But anyways, we'll get into the recap right away. But first off, Sean, how was your week?
My week was okay up until Friday. But yeah, other than that, not bad. Busy. How about yours?
It's been busy and crazy. I don't think either of us are willing to go into what happened in our lives, but let's just say it's been rough at the restaurant. But it's the life I chose. And like all victims, I feel like I deserve it. So
Did you get touched by a cougar again?
I wish. That's how bad it was. I'm not a guy who likes cougars. Let's put that out here right now. The whole MILF cougar universe was never for me.
Yeah, you went the other way. Prove me wrong, Nick.
I'm trying to think of a funny way to say this, but yeah, I guess in life it's either you rob the cradle or rob the grave. Anyways, Sean, what did you think of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix?
It wasn't terrible, but I find it hard to justify that race.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. About how it's kind of a race that like slips through the cracks. It's nothing special about the layout. It seems like it could be a track that a lot of the drivers say they like, but it could be very interesting to watch, but it never is. It always seems to fall flat. And as we'll get into, I think we had an opportunity for a great race, and it was kind of ruined. But I'll save that for later. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think it's the same. Like, I'm sure to race on that track, it's very exciting. It's kind of like a better Monaco. If you gave me a choice between having Monaco or having Saudi Arabia, I would choose Saudi Arabia. But other than that,
That's a great
it's
point.
not.
Sorry, go on.
It's not thrilling. It's not even that high speed. It technically has the most corners of any track on the calendar, but it really doesn't seem like it, does it?
No.
So, I don't know. It's just kind of a stopgap race, in my opinion. If we were to lose it, I don't think anybody would notice.
We're never losing it. Like we've talked about before. No, we're never losing it. But that's a really good point that you made. That it's the new Monaco in a sense. Like it's what Monaco should be, I guess, or modern day Monaco. If we have to have a prestigious place where a bunch of people go to be tax free and launder their money, let's have it at Saudi Arabia instead of a track that doesn't fit the cars anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it.
I am the shield of this podcast. I take the heat. Let me be canceled.
Yeah.
And yeah, another good point you made too. Like, it's the most corners. It's a minute and 30 lap time. But like Max Verstappen said it too. He's like, next thing I knew, the race is over. It flew by. So it's just kind of weird. Yeah, it's a really weird track.
55 laps, like, it doesn't seem to stack up, but felt like a very short race, didn't it? I didn't look back to see how long it actually was, but I remember at one point looking down and being like, "Holy shit, they're already over halfway through the race."
Yeah,
It's
like
just no, I got nothing left.
lulls you to sleep, I think is the way to put it. Like I found myself not napping, but just kind of like hypnotized by it. Like I'm just there. Yeah, I'm just watching it, and you're right. Next thing you know, there's half a race gone. And not every race is going to be perfect.
No.
But yeah. Okay. On to the good. How many goods do you have off the top of your head?
I don't know, maybe 2 or 3.
It's about the same for me. It's Max and Oscar and Williams for me.
Okay. I've definitely got Oscar in there. Williams, that's a good point. Yeah. Just looking through my list here. Hmm. I think Mercedes makes it up there again as well.
Hmm. They think they had their worst weekend. That's interesting.
It's not their worst weekend on the books.
In terms of points, yeah, I think they meant more pace. I think
Yeah, sure.
they're starting to expect more from themselves.
Oh, with that driver lineup, they shouldn't.
All right, I want to start with Williams because there's not much to say there. They it looks like it's coming together.
Hmm.
Two straight points finishes for Carlos. He's taking charge of the car of not that I wouldn't say he's taking charge of the team, but the team seems to be rallying around him a bit, and Albon's okay with it too. They made they made almost their Fernando was faster than you comment when they said just Alex, keep an eye on the cars behind you and focus on maintaining your tires. And Alex hit back and said, like I'm going to be caught if I do that. Like, but he wasn't complaining that he was essentially keeping position with Carlos. And I think they saw an opportunity to get some momentum with him, and Alex was okay with it. And if they keep this up, they're going to be that midfield team that's always in the points, kind of like how Haas was last year. And it's very exciting to see them get back on track.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah, otherwise, this is not much else to say about Williams unless you have any more points to make on that. I like where they're going. Their lineup is now working, and they're both excited. So let's see where that goes from here.
Yeah, I think you said it. I mean, it was a good weekend. They locked in a double points finish. Carlos' second points finish of the year. So I think he's getting more used to it. The car showed that it had some pace. Given the nature of the track, maybe they've clicked back towards the way it used to be. Let's say a more, what's the word I'm looking for? A less draggy car than last year's, perhaps. So higher speed circuits, better performance. I think that tracks with how the performance has been. Let me look through. Well, Albon did okay in Australia, which isn't a high speed track. China, he did okay. Same. Japan. I mean, it looks like it could be a decent all around car, and it looks like Sainz just has to get on top of it, which maybe he is getting there. One thing to note about this track is that it's not an abrasive surface. It's a very smooth surface. So the tire degradation was non-existent. I think we saw that in the race as well. So I think they were saying at one point that basically the hard and the medium could do a race distance no problem in those conditions.
And that definitely favored the one Red Bull on the track. Just to segue on there, because clearly, for the first time this year, Red Bull didn't have to worry about their stints. McLaren did, in a sense. Red Bull was faster as the stint went on for the first time. And
yes.
And Red Bull, we already knew from, I think it was Japan or China, that Red Bull on low fuel is a threat. So combine that, and that's why we saw Max tear into Oscar's lead towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put him in the good, because I think he could have... I don't want to say a win was stolen from him, because I don't think he was in the right in the first corner. But how do I say this? I think the FIA stole an amazing race from us, or the stewards at least, by handing out a penalty so quickly. And
an interesting take.
Because, I know they had 3 laps under the safety car, or 4 laps under the safety car. But at least from our end, we didn't see any back and forth from the team, from the Red Bull to the stewards. We have precedence at this track. And just so I make myself clear, going into the first corner, it looked like Oscar was ahead. It looks like that was Oscar's corner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Max needed to yield. He didn't want to yield to potentially lose track position to George, so he goes off. And in his defense, Oscar did, I don't want to say deliberately push him off, but he didn't exactly keep his line. Let's just say it like that, which is fair because it was his corner. So Max did something that I think anybody would do to avoid a crash. He went off, cut the corner. And I think both of them played into the referee at that point. And Oscar didn't slow down, but he kept closer to George so that Max was reluctant to give the position back. And Max tried to pull away, hoping Oscar would come after him so that then he could give the position back. But within less than a minute, we have a safety car. Are they supposed to give their positions up or potentially pass? Is Oscar supposed to get a penalty by passing Max under a safety car without Stewart guidance? I think
you can't do that under the safety car.
Exactly. And I think it should have been the onus of the stewards not to just hand out a penalty, but to recognize the situation and say something we saw in 2021, like with Esteban Ocon, Lewis Hamilton, and Max, when Max cut the corner because Lewis pushed him off and Ocon pulled through past Lewis. And Mercedes says, we want Lewis in front of Max. And Red Bull said, fine, if Ocon is in the lead. So the stewards labeled the starting position on the restart. And I think they should have done something like that. They should have said to Red Bull and Max, car 81 leads the restart. Failure to comply is a 5-second penalty. That's what I think they should have done instead of just handing it out. Because Antonelli cut the same corner, no penalty. Yuki causes a collision later on in the lap, no penalty. Max gets a 5-second penalty for that. I think it's a bit harsh. He wasn't in the right, but I think that's why we didn't see the race we wanted, because they were just ready to hand out a penalty. And that's just my opinion. I welcome yours.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad we're not in agreement, because now we can actually have a meaningful conversation about it. You're wrong on everything. So going into turn one, Piastri was in the lead. And this is one that I went back and I watched from both onboards multiple times. Piastri at the apex of his line is in the lead. And this is the nonsense of after the race, Horner printed out in-car screenshots of the corner that show Max is ahead. And yes, technically at the apex of Max's line, he was ahead. But he was not on the optimal line. So your comment of Piastri was off of his line is incorrect, empirically. Piastri nailed his line exactly. It was the optimal line into the corner. He did not yield, and he kept his line the way it was. Which, in a way, you could say that was naughty, because he didn't leave Max any room.
Exactly.
When he knew that Max was alongside him. Sure. But this is why I put Piastri in the good column, because he outmaxed Max.
Completely agree with that. Continue. Yeah.
His move into turn one was a Max Verstappen move. This is my corner. This is my line. Fuck you. Do what you need to do. And this is the Oscar Piastri I signed up for. So he doesn't deserve any shtick for his move. His move was perfectly fine. He was ahead at the apex of his line. And if Max hadn't chopped over at the beginning to try and cut him off, because Max got a poor start, Max could have had that line. The only reason Max was in the position he was come turn one is because he made that chop over so quickly off the line. If he had kept his line, he would have potentially been behind Oscar going into the corner, but he would have been able to get in front of him.
But can I just say one thing? Yes. So you're allowed to do that line, but if you were supposed to leave space, wasn't Oscar supposed to take the outside into the next apex while Max takes the inside? If Max goes outside in, Oscar has to go inside out, right? That's what you're saying is naughty of him, and I completely agree, kept his position, well, kept his outmax Max.
No. So Oscar was taking the optimal racing line. If you watch any of those drivers go through there in qualifying, they all took that line. That is the straight line through the chicane, essentially. What Oscar did. That is a perfectly acceptable line. He was ahead going into that line, and therefore he did not have to give up anything to Max.
Okay.
That's a well-established principle in F1. Christian says, oh, look, he's ahead at the apex. And yeah, Max was ahead at the apex of his line, but the apex of his line is actually further by the nature of that corner. So it doesn't matter at that point because Oscar's already on his turn in. So Max did the right thing in the sense that he did not turn in steeper and collide with Piastri, which would have been a penalty for causing a collision. But Max did what Max does, and I can't fault him for this. It was basically get in front, try and pull away, and try and make it so that a penalty doesn't matter at that point. Right? If he could get 5 to 10 seconds ahead, it wouldn't have mattered. Now, about the penalty being unfair, it was actually more than fair because it was a 5-second penalty and not a 10-second penalty. And we saw that later in the race. I forget who it was. It may have been Antonelli.
Or Lawson.
Lawson got a 10-second penalty for doing a very similar thing. That is the penalty that was deserved for that infraction. But the stewards took leniency on Max in the sense that they were so close together, and it was the first corner of the first lap, that they gave him a 5-second. And realistically, that 5-second didn't do a whole lot. Yes, it ended up with Piastri being ahead, but he didn't really run off with it, did he?
No.
So I don't think that ruined the race. I think what ruined the race was Saudi Arabia in general. But this is the trope of Saudi Arabia, where 100% safety car percentage in Saudi since it started, but never after halfway. So it always happens near the beginning of the race. And that combined with the low abrasion of the circuit gives us a point where everybody's basically counting on pitting early on, putting a hard tire on and running till the end. And then you end up with a boring race. Now, in fairness, I think the nature of this year, like we've said before, is everybody's going to be closer, and there was some decent passing, there was some decent racing within the pack, but it didn't make for a very exciting race. All right, we saw a ton of passing in Bahrain when it was relatively good. This wasn't the same. So I don't think it was the penalty or Max or Piastri that did anything that made the race shit. It was unfortunately the incident between Tsunoda and Gasly that made it shit, in my opinion.
That's a fair point. And I think you said everything I wanted to say about Oscar. I think you nailed it. Sign me up. Like, he's not letting Max push him around. He's not letting Max get into him mentally. He's taking charge of races. He absolutely deserved that win. I think some Max fans will make the case that Max might have deserved the win had he not got the penalty. I think you made a really good point about it. I'm not going to argue it too much. Mm-hmm. It's a good point. It's just, I think we would have seen like the back and forth Saudi Arabia we saw in 2022 if they didn't hand out that penalty. And I like with Charles and Max constantly passing each other lap after lap, this cat and mouse, I think that's what we missed, in my opinion.
Yeah, but we'll never get that again. We'll never get that again because they purposely changed the DRS detection zones to avoid that.
Man, they just really want to ruin this race for everybody. Okay.
Well, it is unsafe, right? Because we saw it especially with Max and Charles, where they were effectively slowing down, not not to a stop, but to a virtual crawl so that one could get in front of the other at the detection zone. That's a little silly. It did make for good racing in the race, sure, but it is dangerous. So they've changed it because of that, and they've changed it basically to after. What is it? They've changed the detection zone to after the corner after the DRS zone, if that makes sense, because there's more than one DRS zone. So it no longer makes sense for you to give up the position to get the DRS effectively. So we won't see that again in Saudi Arabia. That was the only year that we would see it. I agree with you. I think it made for better racing, but this is the nature of the track, and we unfortunately have to accept it.
Yeah. I like your take too, that Max probably knew what he was doing and thought I could pull away from Oscar, and that is another feather in Oscar's cap to say, no, you can't.
Oh.
Maybe if I was Lando, yeah, but not me.
Yeah. And I feel like this is the Red Bull MO, right? Don't accept defeat. Don't accept that you've done anything wrong. Push on. If we get a penalty, we'll deal with it. But you're better off pleading ignorance effectively and trying to pull the biggest gap you can so that you minimize any damage of a penalty. Right. And I want to say he was 2 seconds ahead of Piastri when he went into the pits, something like that.
It was closer to 3.
Closer to 3. Okay, there you go. So it's decent, right? So it was basically, he gave up a 2-second advantage in the pit stop. And that was pretty clear because when he did pit and Piastri came around, he came out of the pits not far behind Piastri. So, and that was obvious in the result of the race where he finished on the podium. But on the Piastri side, one more thing I want to say about him and on the good before we move on is he called it with the McLaren team perfectly, because Verstappen pitted, Piastri pitted to cover off the undercut, and then Norris was out in front. And Norris was doing what he was doing, right? Trying to control the race from the front, having started in a less than optimal position in 10th. And I was fearing that it was going to be another Hungary situation where Lando found himself out front and just wanted to fuck around and get the win, somehow manage to try and get the win, which we all knew wasn't going to happen. But luckily that wasn't the case. Right, we heard a little bit of radio. I'm not sure what you heard, but basically the team spoke to Lando, and Lando was like, yeah, well, I'm okay here. I don't need to pit yet. And he was trying to extend. And then Piastri came on and went, well, what's going on here, guys? I'm starting to feel a little bit of dirty air. And he's 3 seconds behind Lando. It's like 3 seconds behind, you're not feeling dirty air. But that's what he decided to push towards the team. And then lo and behold, next lap, Lando's in the pits. Right? Get him out of there. Get Piastri in front. So I'm glad to see that Piastri is making calls and the team is listening to him now. Because that could have gone much differently, and I think that would have been a shit show.
Yeah, and you notice there's no fuckery when Oscar's running the team. We talked about this last week. No strategy error, no mistakes by McLaren. No Ferrari situation when they rally around Oscar. It was all last year when Lando was the guy. Mm-hmm. More on that later, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm glad we have these conversations. I at no point thought that Max was right to do what he did. It's just I think Red Bull's been through this before. They should have had the sense to say to the stewards, okay, can we start the restart behind Oscar? Do something like that.
Thank you for reminding me about that.
Don't leave your driver hanging. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. That can't happen and it can't happen because of 2021.
Oh,
So one, behind the safety car, you're not allowed to swap positions. The only way you're allowed to pass another driver under the safety car is if the person in front of you has a mechanical failure or if you've been directed by the race director to unlap yourself. After 2021, the decision was made that there's no more direct communication between the teams and the race director to plead for, let's say, leniency or alternate sentences. All right, obviously the teams can still report to the race director, the teams can still do whatever they want, but they're no longer allowing the race director to make unilateral decisions based on team input. So when something like that happens, it's been referred to the stewards investigate it, the race director cannot intervene with the steward's decision based on input from the team. So there is no more of that nonsense of, well, okay, let us do this, let us do that. No, they've put a stop to that.
yeah, and okay, that's good to know. Like I was wondering, I said if they did this in 2021, why aren't they doing this year? Okay, there's precedent for that, written in the rules. Also, and I've talked about this before, because that's a nonsense 10-second penalty for a first corner, first lap position going off the track. That would never have been a penalty until last year when Max kept abusing it. And I understand
that's the precedent we have, that it should be a 10-second.
Yeah, because he abused it last year. I was reading that this was a new thing. To stop Max, you've kind of made these ridiculous rules, in my opinion. Because I don't see how that would ever, like you're saying, oh, we're being lenient because it's only a 5. It's neither.
Well,
And
it is.
And he had less than a lap to think I have to give the position back to Oscar, because like they said, there's a safety car right away.
He only had less than a lap because two people came together behind him. He has no control over that. As far as he's concerned, that there's a possibility that doesn't happen, and he just gets out there and tries to run away with it. It doesn't matter that people crash behind him. He didn't give it back. When that happens, you were supposed to give it back right away. You made the comment that Antonelli ran off and did the exact same thing, but he backed out of it, and he actually lost the positions that he gained plus more. He did what you're supposed to do. And I know you're going to say, well, that's not what a champion does. And you're not wrong.
No, I'm not going to say that at all. No.
But that's the way it's supposed to be.
No,
and if you lose more than one position, you lose more than one position.
Then you're right. Then that's exactly why Max didn't do it, because he definitely didn't want to be behind George.
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad we talked this out.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. He did it because that's Red Bull's MO, because by doing that, he guarantees there's at least a chance that he gets away with it. Or there's a chance that he at least pulls enough of a gap that it's not an issue. Right?
So then
he's not going to change.
Definitely not. And so my theory of us losing a potentially good race is now, I'm going to back out of that, wink, so to speak. This race was hopeless then, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, it's Monaco 2.0.
There you go. Okay. Tell us what you think, everybody. What do you think happened there? We'd like to hear all your opinions. Give us a comment on this, on the YouTube channel, on the Spotify channel. What do you think of our conversation? I still think Max had a good weekend because he got pole. And he put that Red Bull probably where it didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll give him that. And then now I think after talking this out, it's pretty clear he caused his own second place. Or maybe Red Bull said, don't give it up. We'll make it up. Trust us. Either way, Red Bull or Max fucked up their own race.
Yep.
Cool.
Great. Long season. Still plenty of time.
Oh, yeah. But now McLaren, I think, understands that if we rally behind Oscar, a driver's title is in the making.
Yes.
3 out of 5. And the only 2 he didn't win, he was told to stay behind Lando. Interesting, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. before we end this part, do you have any other goods you want to talk about, or should we end it here and start with the bad?
I think it's worthwhile talking about Mercedes.
Okay.
They were kind of down about their pace. That's clear. But I think they're solidifying their place as the number 2 team. The number 2 team as far as the constructors, but let's say the third place team on aggregate, because Verstappen's a team of his own, basically. All right, I think that makes sense. Because, yes, they are second place in the constructors at 111 points to Red Bull's 89. But from a driver's standpoint, it's clear that Verstappen is ahead of both of their drivers. All right, so he's, 15 points or something like that ahead of Russell?
Probably more.
It's 87 to 73.
Oh, Russell has 73 points. Good on him.
Yeah. And that's my point. Like, Mercedes might bitch and moan about their pace, but Russell is scoring double-digit points every race. And I talked about this before. I don't think Russell is anything special per se. I think he's just a mid-pack driver in a good car, because he gets in these situations where he's just kind of there. Right? I didn't see what the gaps were this weekend, but it's not unusual for him to have like 10 seconds in front and 20 seconds behind. Right? He's out there doing a time trial on his own basically every race. And good on him for qualifying in a position that allows him to do that and score good points. He could be in a Sauber at the back doing that, like Bortoleto. And then we have Antonelli, who first year, first 5 Grand Prix, and he's got points in 4 of the 5 Grand Prix plus 1 sprint. That's impressive. And either he is a phenomenal driver or the car is really good. So that's why I think, yeah, they're complaining that they don't have the pace, but realistically, without having a superstar driver in that car, they really can't ask for more. This is the best they've performed in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Lewis Hamilton's probably kicking himself, but more on that later.
I'm sure if he was there, he'd be bitching about the car and he'd be doing worse than Antonelli.
I was gonna get to that. Because we didn't talk about it last week, and I know you don't like speculating. Do you think that superstar driver Max Verstappen goes there next year?
I don't know. I've heard some stupid shit this week, but
exactly.
I don't see why. Realistically, like, Max is going to be Max wherever he is. And maybe this is my own bias coming into it, but Max is not a personality that I see getting along with many people. So why risk a worse season with new people that you don't know, that you can't get acquainted with, and it all going to shit real quick, right? When in reality, if he wanted, he could just walk away for next year. Walk away for 26, see who comes out on top, and then decide to come back in 27. And frankly, if he were to do that, I think he's champion in 27.
He's too Schumacher and not enough Senna to do that. Because I think you're right. He wants the team around him that is at his beck and call. He would rather.
I don't know that he gets that at Mercedes.
Definitely, you're absolutely right. I think he has that at Red Bull now.
Yeah.
And Schumacher never waited for the team to be the best team. He always wanted to make it the best team. So my theory is if he loses this year, there's no way he goes to Mercedes. He would rather prove that he can win with a bad car or bring that team back to the top step than to just go to the next best team or the easiest solution. I just don't think he's that type of guy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like Mercedes wants him from what they're saying. I think this is just all speculation.
It is. And I mean, yeah, sure. I'm sure Toto's talking to Max. Why wouldn't he be? But frankly, I think the better bet for Max is actually Aston.
That's a good point.
Because, Stroll is going to throw whatever money he can at the team. And if he has to invest another $1 billion into Aston to get Max and to get whoever and whatever Max wants at that team, he's going to do it. Mercedes, I don't know that they will. Like, yeah, Toto is an owner of Mercedes, but he still has a board of directors and everything else that he's got to, placate. And you can say the same for Lawrence, but ultimately Lawrence runs the show and Lawrence has the money to do it. So I think if anything happens, it's going to be Aston, because there's also the Honda tie up there as well, which he seems to enjoy. Because that's another thing that people don't realize. Like, these engines are not the same. And we heard it from Lewis and Carlos at the beginning of the season. Like, you go from a Mercedes engine to a Ferrari engine, and just the way that they get data in the engineering meetings is completely backwards. The way that they plot the graphs basically shows the opposite of what they're used to. And that can be extremely off-putting for people who've been doing it for so long, right? So just being able to speak in a competent way to what's happening isn't the same. So I don't know why Max would want to go to Mercedes.
Just as a quick funny, that probably explains why Carlos is improving at such a good rate, because he's not dealing with the backwards Ferrari anymore, and it explains why Lewis is degrading at that same rate, because it's Ferrari. To your point about Aston, it makes more sense. It actually speaks to both of our points in saying that Max, even if he loses this year, waits a year at Red Bull to see how bad, like you said, the Ford engines are. And there's 2 open contracts at the end of 2026 at Austin, at least Fernando.
Yeah.
So yeah, wait to see how that turns out. And we believe that Austin will be on the upward trajectory once Newey has his fingers in the pie. And just as the final point, would Mercedes sit there and tell us that George is the next thing for 3 years, give up on that clearly for Antonelli, and then within a year of saying Antonelli's the next greatest thing, give up on that for Max? No. No chance.
If anybody's going anywhere, it's George.
Yes. But
yeah,
still a long season to see if he can do anything with this Mercedes.
Yeah. And I think ultimately they're going to be top 3, which is impressive. But yeah, I mean, if anybody's got the money to put into the car, it's definitely Mercedes. So we'll see how it goes. Alonso's had some interesting comments in the last few races about the fact that he still has a contract, and even when this contract is done, he sees his involvement with Aston as long-term. So, I don't know. He's definitely hinting that he's not going to be there much longer. He's going to be there 26, and I think his contract runs up at the end of 26.
Yes.
But he's claiming that he will be with Aston past 26, but not necessarily as a racing driver. So what that is, I don't know. Maybe he takes a Helmut Marko type position.
Oh my God.
Or maybe he just ends up like Pedro de la Rosa and just milks the ambassador role for nothing at all and gets paid to be there, and that's it.
Yeah, we'll see. He's definitely hit a cliff. I don't think he comes back from this, Fernando. If anyone's on retirement watch this year, let's keep an eye on him.
I mean, I'll ask the question. If he scores 0 points this year, you think he starts next season?
That's a great question. If he retires, if he has the sense to retire, I think Aston Martin and the media is so delusional about him that they will find a way to keep him on. That's my opinion.
Interesting.
Like, the media will pump his tires. Hey, he's got so much to prove. Don't give up, Fernando. We don't want to lose you. And Aston Martin will say, we signed him for a reason. He's our champion. He's our future champion. It's the fallacy of sunken costs. If Aston Martin gives up on him after this year, they're acknowledging that they just wasted 3 years. So,
sure, but I would argue that they have that problem with both drivers.
We don't speak of that.
The difference is the other driver has 10 points, which may end up being the only points that they get this year.
Yeah, because based on last year, after Imola, nothing got better, and the Imola upgrades are coming soon. And we'll see if you're right. Did Nui say, make your bed for this year, I'll deal with next year? Or did he help at all with the upgrades this year?
Well, and before we go too off topic, I'll touch on that. I've heard from sources in the F1 world that Nui isn't showing up to meetings or responding to emails or anything like that. He's heads down into next year, which is a very Nui thing to do. But the latest I've heard is that Stroll is none too happy that Nui refuses to get involved in this year's car.
Ooh.
So clearly someone didn't really pay too much attention to who they were hiring. You and I talked about it before the beginning of the season that I was fairly confident Nui would not touch this year's car.
Well said. You were right.
That looks to be the case, and it doesn't really look like Stroll believed that was going to happen.
Maybe Eddie Jordan told him something else, and Nui just nodded his head in the meeting. Sure, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever Eddie says, knowing exactly what he was going to do.
I mean, Nui's character and personality are well documented. You don't have to go far to find out that, when he doesn't want to do something, he's not going to do it. Go read his book.
I should. I need a nice new good book.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'll get through it, but
I might.
There's a lot of technical detail in that book.
Never mind. Yeah. This is a spicy season. That's awesome. Great news, Sean. That's I'm happy to hear that. I like hearing stuff like that. Let's keep makes Austin Martin exciting.
Yep.
All right. I think. Sorry, one more thing. Say what you guys say.
No, I was just gonna say I'll put it out here now. Aston Martin is paying Nui $33 million. I'm going to say Nui gets paid $33 million to see the 26 car hit the grid, and then he's no longer with the team. And then he gets forced into retirement.
Did your sources hint at that?
No, that's just what I'm feeling, because Stroll is that stupid.
Wow.
And then they're going to regret that when the car starts strong for the first 5 races, and those first upgrades go tits up when Nui's not there.
Or, if Fernando's still in the car at that point, which,
Yeah.
Which we know will just send the car backwards instinctively, yeah. Wow. You just dropped a couple bombs. That's what this show's all about. All right. We got a little off topic, but that's the end of our good for this week for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We'll be back with the bad.